Oh man, what a couple of weeks, huh? Yeah, you look at the media and the state of the world right now, and wow, you know, and I got to say, I've actually felt a lot of anger, a lot of hatred about the people and the circumstances that surround it, and I don't like to feel that way. And I'm not even going to try to to be spiritual and say that and put on a false impression. I'm feeling hatred and I'm feeling anger, and I'm not going to ignore the elephant in the room. No. And I would suppose I'm not the only one feeling that way. Uh, from the other people I've talked to, they're feeling that same thing right now. So what I'm gonna do now is try to just really explore the feelings and in the sources and stuff like that, and the thoughts I'm having about it, sharing them with you. And I would hope that you would leave me some comments or whatever and give me some feedback because I certainly don't know it all, you know. So let's get right into it. One of the things I do understand is that I can feel hatred, I can feel angry, I can feel that and still be loving because love isn't a feeling, love is a choice. We all have feelings, and the feelings themselves are neither right nor wrong. And I can feel hatred without being hateful. I can have that feeling and sit with it and understand it rather than letting it turn into some really bad stuff. See, love is a choice. I can choose love, and sometimes the most loving thing I can do is nothing, but just sit with the feeling, consider its source, and just remembering that I I own my emotions. Letting my Nobody can make me mad. The anger isn't theirs, it's mine to deal with. It's my baby, it's not theirs. It's really not about the circumstances and people that are the source of the anger. It's coming from the inside out, not the outside in, you see? It's my anger. So it's not about what's out here so much as how I see what's out here, how I see what's out here, not what's out here. Because how I see what's out here is going to affect how I'm feeling in here. Yeah, yeah. So it's not the circumstances or the people, it's how I see them in my expectations and my judgments, any kind of a sense of entitlement that I hold to. All that's ground for anger, hatred, bitterness, and all of us fall prey to that from time to time. No one's immune. So this is nothing new, this thing of dealing with hatred and anger, right? Fortunately, we have a wide plethora of philosophers, spiritual people, sages, who have had the same issues and have shared their wisdom on how to get through it. So I like to consider that stuff, no matter what the source, whether it be a Stoic philosopher or a Buddhist or a Hindu or a Christian, or just your everyday average Joe. I want to listen, I want to glean from it all so that I can take what I can to deal with what I've got. You know, take what I can to deal with what I got. There's an old, so let's get right into it. One of the first things I thought of when I started to sit with this was there's an old Buddhist guy, and his name was Shantideva. He was a pretty wise dude, and he was very well respected. And what I'm going to read now, it doesn't matter what faith you are, what persuasion you are. Just sit with what I'm going to read, because that's what I'm doing now. And we'll see if it helps us. He says this, he says, when the urge arises in the mind to feelings of desire or wrathful hate, do not act. Be silent. Do not speak. And like a log, you should remain. When the mind is wild with mockery and filled with pride and haughty arrogance, and when you want to show the hidden faults of others, to bring up old dissensions, or to act deceitfully, and when you want to fish for praise, or criticize and spoil another's name, or use harsh language sparring for a fight, it's then that, like a log, you should remain. And when you want to do another down and cultivate advantage for yourself, and when the wish to gossip comes to you, it's like a log, you should remain. Impatience, indolence, faint-heartedness, and likewise prideful speech and insolence, attachment to your side, when these arise, it is like a log that you should remain. Examine yourself from every side. Note harmful thoughts and every futile striving. Thus it is with the heroes of the spiritual path, with perfect and unyielding faith, with steadfastness, respect, and courtesy, with modesty and conscientiousness, work calmly for the happiness of others. Thus, with a free and untrammeled mind, put on an ever-smiling countenance. Rid yourself of scowling, making frowns, wrathful frowns, and be a true and honest friend to all. A true and honest friend to all. To all. All means all. That means I don't get to pick and choose between this politician and that politician and this religion and that religion, or this dude and that dude, and all is all. And be a true and honest friend to all. Now, this was a pretty wise guy. I mean, and if I can do what he said, I will get what he got. And he had a lot of peace. He had a lot of joy. He was basically happy. Now, one of the things he said in the beginning of this that I want to refresh us on is, he said in the beginning, when the urge arises in the mind to feelings of desire and wrathful hate, it's not a matter of if. That's going to happen. It's not a matter of if, it's when. You see, it happens to everybody. But he's addressing it right off the bat. Right off the bat, he's addressing it. And that's what we need to do is address it. That's what I need to do. I say we, but I got to look at me. Yeah. I need to address these feelings of anger and hatred I've had when I hear of all the injustice and cruelty and stuff going on in the world right now. And yeah, I can look at it and make judgments about it. I can go right, wrong, good, evil. And unfortunately, with the media, I see more wrong and evil. But these are just judgments. That's all they are, is judgments. We really don't know what good and evil or right or wrong is. And I forget this. I have to go back to that parable of the Chinese farmer that Alan Watts talks about. And if you haven't heard it, Google it on YouTube, or go to YouTube and type in Alan Watts and parable of the Chinese farmer. And it clearly explains about judgments and how really futile it is to make them and take them as the absolute truth. I posted some of this on social media, and a girl named April replied to it, and I dig what she said. She really got me, she hit me right here, and that's what I needed. And what she said is that feeling hatred starts with a judgment. If you believe you can judge and love simultaneously, you are deceived. We don't make ourselves wrong for the judgment. To do so is more judgment. We ask to have our mind healed of the loveless belief about the other, to see them as the Christ tense, innocent and perfect child of God. And whether you're, if you could, even, it don't matter whether you're a Christian or what, see them as innocent, imperfect, as they are. There's nothing wrong, okay? And just kind of, and what I want to do is just kind of consider it from that standpoint. That standpoint of all, being loving all of them. What she said is we can't be judgmental and love at the same time. Now that doesn't change who and what I am. I am love. I was born of love. I was created in the image of love. This thing, okay? But when I make judgments like that, I'm not manifesting that being of my true self. It doesn't change who I am, but it does affect the manifestation of who I really am. Huh? Right. And I think of the prodigal son in the Bible. And the son, he goes and tells his father, give me all the cash for my inheritance, and not because I want it now. And he goes out, leaves home, parties it up, spends it all, ends up hungry in a pig pen, and he longing for the food that the pigs ate, trying to work to eat. And the thing is, when he was out there partying, when he was out there in the pig pen, he was no less a son of his father than when he was before he left. And none of us is really separate. We're all in this same family. We're all in this same body of humanity. We're all in the same body of being. And if I can see it like that, then it can change the way I see. If I can change that, it can change the way I see, and then I can see see change happen. Yeah. So at heart, we're all innocent and perfect. Even if we're ignorant. See, the thing about ignorant people is they don't know they're ignorant because they're ignorant. I've been in that space, yeah, especially when I get all pissed off. And there's many of a fool has been right in his own eyes. So anyway, if I'm holding on to these judgments, what happens is I form resentments. The feeling of hatred there, that's a red flag. That's what that emotion is for. It's to say, hey, stop, check it out. Whoa. Rather than get carried away by it, take it as a stop sign, a red flag. And what I'm learning to do is just to watch, let go of the judgments, take a deep breath, let go of the anger, not breathe it out on everybody else, but just to release it, you know? Somebody else asked what we were talking about this, and they asked me if I ever had to fight for somebody, you know. And so this gets into the place where what that anger and hatred can turn into, and what the fighting's all about. So I started thinking about that, and as it came to me, and there's a lot of stuff that come to me that I'm not going to talk about here just for time's sake, because I could go on and on and on. But Solomon, King Solomon, he once said, "Open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all who are destitute. Open your mouth, judge righteously, defend the rights of the poor and needy." Defend the rights of the poor and needy. So this is coming from one of the wisest guys in the world. And so there's a time for me to step in and defend the rights of the poor and the needy. But I don't think the right time is when I'm filled with rage. So I tend to make stupid decisions then. In the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna and Krishna had these conversations going on, and Arjuna was told to go to war with peace in his heart, basically, from what I understand. And this entailed going into a physical battle with his relatives, and maintain that inner peace and fight for a righteous cause. Of one's duty without attachment to outcome or violence involved. To fight without being violent. Essentially fighting with a peaceful mindset despite the act of war itself. So this is a possibility I have to entertain. Can I fight for what is right with peace in my heart rather than anger and wrath? I can remember when the Vietnam War was going on, and a Buddhist monk named Thich Nhat Hanh would go out and demonstrate. And another guy, I think Martin Luther was around the same time, Martin Luther King, and he was another person that made demonstrated and bought things up and took a voice and did things to defend people who were being treated unjustly. But they did it in such a way, they did it from a space of being loving rather than anger or hate. They didn't mock the people, they didn't belittle them or anything like that. And when I look, especially on social media these days, I see a lot of that going on, a lot of mockery and belittling, and sometimes I'm tempted so much just to get right in with them and play that game with memes and stuff like that. Yeah, some stuff's funny. Sometimes some of the stuff's funny. Some of the stuff you can just laugh at, but some of the stuff is sort of sarcastic and biting, and you can just sense it comes from that wrath and that anger, not from that spirit of love and peace and gentleness and mildness. And see, this is what I've been feeling is that wrath and hatred. And I don't want to address what's going on in the world out of that spirit. In the Bible, St. James said, he says this, he goes, "My dear brothers and sisters, take note of this. Everyone is everyone, should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry, because the human anger does not produce the righteousness that God desires." So what's the fruit of that type of anger? It's not good. It's not righteous. It isn't in sync with life. And it causes us to suffer. That doesn't mean that there's not a time and place for it and war and everything else. Solomon also said this, and you've probably heard this in a song somewhere. There's a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to uproot, a time to kill, and a time to heal. Yeah, check that out. A time to tear down and a time to build. A time to weep, a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up searching, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear, a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak. There's a timing to that speech, see? There's a time to love and a time to hate. A time to hate? Well, I get the time to love part, but there's a time to hate? Why is this real? This is one wise dude, and he's telling me there's a time for it. A time for war and a time for peace. A time for war. Time for war and a time for peace. So there's a time for everything, even the stupid judgments that I end up making. I call them stupid. Who am I to judge my judgments? Who am I to judge my judgments, eh? There's even a place for them. There's a time for everything. And in themselves They ain't right or wrong. Nothing's happening by accident here. Everything's click, 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 even though I don't see it with this. And so I can recognize that even these judgments have their time and their place. And yet I need to remember this, that feeling hatred starts with the judgment, like April was telling me earlier. Feeling hatred starts with the judgment. If you believe you can judge and love simultaneously, you're deceived. We don't make ourselves strong for the judgment. To do that is just more judgment. So we're not looking at that judgment as right or wrong. It's just a judgment. But it gets in the way of love. Yeah. And in a way, it's sort of like the yin and the yang. You know, everything balances itself out. Can't have one without the other. Wouldn't know one without the other. If everything was blue, you wouldn't know what the other colors, there are any other colors if all you seen was blue. But because we see other colors, we can recognize blue and other colors, yeah. And the things that I'm learning today, through the experiences I'm having, even the judgments, the experience of having these judgments, they have their place. I wouldn't learn unless I was making those judgments. The prodigal son would not have learned unless he went through the whole circle and came back to where he started. So yeah, there's judgments, but the thing is, thank God everything's circular. It's circular, and I come back and hopefully have learned from my experience. But yet there's a time for war. So when is there a right time for war, or when is the skillful time to have a war? Well, we learned earlier from the Bhagavad Gita that to do so with peace in the heart. It's sort of like going to war without going to war. Waging war without being violent. Waging war without being violent. A lot like martial artists, they flow there. It's not about anger, it's about grace, right? And there's a graceful way to wage war without being violent. This has been hard for me to grok and comprehend, because I was of the opinion that all war is wrong. And then there I go making judgments, right and wrong again. So I have to challenge these opinions and these judgments and suppositions that I have. Otherwise I get stuck in the same rut. Okay. And right now I'm thinking about what Lao Tzu, he wrote the Tao Te Ching, said, and here this comes from the Tao Te Ching. Weapons are the tools of violence. All decent men detest them. Weapons are the tools of fear. A decent man will avoid them, except in the direst necessity. So there is a time to pick up a weapon. In the time of the direst necessity. But overall, you don't want to be doing that shit, right? And if compelled, we'll use them. Except in the direst necessity, and if compelled, we'll use them only with utmost restraint. To use the weapons with restraint. Wow, yeah. Peace is the highest value. If the peace has been shattered, how can he be content? His enemies are not demons, but human beings like himself. Yeah. He doesn't wish them personal harm, nor does he rejoice in victory. How could he rejoice in victory and delight in the slaughter of men? He enters into a battle gravely, with sorrow and with great compassion, as if he were attending a funeral. So there's a way to pick up a weapon and use it with skill and use it in the right time and be in sync and be compassionate and be at peace. And God knows I need to learn how to do that, because I have a lot of growing to do. A Buddhist sage once said, "There is no way to peace, for peace is the way." There is no way to peace, for peace is the way. You can't bring on peace by fighting a war, right? This may sound contradictory to what I just said, but hear me out. Yeah. War does not bring peace. It can't bring peace because the peace is already there. Peace is here now. Love is here now. Joy is here now. These things are whole. They don't come and go. They remain. These things are eternal. So I can't make peace by war because it's already here. I can't create it because it's already here. Yeah, it's here now. So it's not a matter if the peace is present or not, but am I present with it? Yeah, am I an awareness of it? Am I present with it? Am I showing up for life as it is? Because that peace is always here in the background. Only always, because it ain't partial, it's whole. It's like this, either you can't be just a little bit at peace. Either you're at peace or you're not. You can't be just a little bit in love. You're either loving or you're not. You can't tell a half truth. A half truth is still a lie. Only that which is whole and nothing but that is that. Only that which is whole and nothing but that is that. Only that which is whole and nothing but that is that. Yeah. Again, Lao Tzu said his enemies are not demons, but human beings like himself. And like April said earlier about our fellow man being an innocent and perfect child of God. We're not different. And when April was talking about the mind being healed, the mind being healed of a loveless belief about some other person, and rather to see them as Christ, henceforth a perfect child of God. And you can put a perfect child of love. You don't have to create this God that's sitting in the sky. Love. And what's the difference between a flower and a weed? But a judgment. The rose has the same aroma and fragrance, whether we call it a weed or flower. It doesn't change what it is. And we can take that which is innocent and perfect and judge it as being demonic. We can get those words in like flower or weed, yeah. And I think what we all need to remember is this, that we tend to judge ourselves by our intentions and others by their actions. And maybe that whole thing needs to be turned around. Namaste. Hopefully you can give me some feedback because I'm not wholly resolved on this yet, but I'm looking.